The New Gods have been canceled. Well, Ava DuVernay's New Gods, that was going to be written with Tom King. This is good news because there was no way that was ever going to be any good. Ava DuVernay comes out of political documentaries, but those don't make the big bucks, so she stepped into the arena of blockbuster movies with Wrinkle in Time, and it flopped big. So what happens? Well, you fail upward and you get another one. But the days of merely assigning movies for the purpose of woke points sooner or later would have to come to an end because you've actually got to make some money. And these films just don't do that. Your best hope would be that, somehow accidentally there would be something good in it. But when they partner up with Tom King, I was like, all hope is lost. Tom King, he fooled me once back when he did his Mr. Miracle series, which is a New God character. But it became apparent that it was just nothing but a bunch of, icing and no cake. It's very similar to my reactions to a lot of Bad Robot product, where there's an awful lot of teasing, there's the mystery box and all that sort of stuff, and a bunch of repetition, especially when you're dealing with a series like the comic book series, which is 12 issues. Probably if you'd shrunk it down to 4 or 5, might have been a pretty solid book. But it had a lot of repetition in it, and the payoff just wasn't really there. So, he tricked me. But the thing about it is that he still follows that same pattern because he's big with woke points and stuff like that, and all of that is to shield lackluster work. And so the laziness gets worse as you go forward. And he ended up losing Batman, which should tell you something, and stuff like that. So the idea that he was going to write some masterpiece and sell the New Gods to the overall movie audience, it was very dubious. It's a hard thing to do anyway. New Gods, probably Snyder Cut is their first introduction to it for the normie audience, as they refer to it, because they're not on par with Batman or Superman. They don't know these characters. And so, but something coming out of Snyder Cut probably would be a good little jump to a spinoff of some sort. So I think HBO Max having a series based on New Gods and making it like a Game of Thrones in space, hopefully with a better ending that doesn't fizzle, would be an excellent way for those characters to pay off. And I think someone who actually does care about this could make a masterpiece out of it. Jack Kirby always had he was just an idea machine, his visions and whatnot, was constantly churning out of the man, but he was never a great writer in the sense of crafting scripts. He really needed a partner. But, after living under Stan Lee and feeling like Stan Lee did him wrong, in some ways, he's not wrong about that. He was right about that. But he just needed that to kind of make it more cohesive. And so you read the collection of New Gods, it's kind of all over the place in some ways, in different directions to suddenly end and goes off into something else. But still, it's these innovative and cool ideas there that someone could fuse that and make it more cohesive story for the purposes of a series. And I think that could work. A lot of follow-ups on it in other comic book series, and Walter Simonson took a crack at it and did some good stuff, and John Byrne did. And it's all well and good. Especially now, I'm sure immediately people who wouldn't know, maybe some of the hesitancy in it would say, oh, it's some kind of superhero ripoff of Star Wars. It's the other way around. Obviously, one of the main focuses of the story is the conflict between Darkseid and Orion. Orion was primarily the main hero of the story, but he is the son of Darkseid. So he's this is, Luke and Darth, even though Luke is a much nicer person, Orion is not very nice at all. He takes after his daddy quite a bit. And there is an interesting storyline about that. One day you become your father and all that sort of stuff. And so there's that in there. And, of course, Apocalypse itself, when you turn off the fire pits, it pretty much looks like the Death Star. But, look, it's the other way around. I think George Lucas was borrowing from New Gods in some of these elements. sooner or later. And it's hard not to think that. I mean, the Force, and then there's the Source, and the New Gods, and you know, all that. Plus, Darkseid's name is Darkseid. So, I mean, you know, and there's no secret about this. George Lucas openly admitted that he, you know, borrowed from Lord of the Rings and Flash Gordon and all that sort of stuff. And so, it looks like New Gods was another, because it predates Star Wars. So it's, you know, and he was aware of the comic books and all that. So, but maybe, you know, but for the normal everyday movie audience, they don't know all that stuff. So, you know, but still, a writer worth his salt could craft a pretty good series out of that. And I would hope it could get looked at. But I'm a little worried. Some people are probably thinking, oh man, this is a sign they're moving back to Snyderverse, and, you know, they want to bring it all into that version of it. That would be nice, but I'm thinking it has more to do. There's just not enough money to go around. And that's like, he says, hey, don't worry about, you know, they're wanting to move on with other versions of the superheroes, and, you know, J.J. Abrams will be taking over Superman and Green Lantern and all that. And it'll be the multiverse, and we'll get Henry Cavill's Superman, and we'll get Ben Affleck's Batman, and Zach will get to do his sequels. And I was like, that's too much money. And it's not, yeah. And I like, don't underestimate the machinations of Bad Robot. And maybe this is one of the first victims of it. I don't know, but so that shuts down any future of New Gods for the moment. If it was ever going to be, I think at a certain point, whatever they decided to sign her on. She was supposed to be a part of Black Panther, I think, directed, and they had to, they parted ways rather quickly. Then Warner Brothers said, oh, look, we've got Ava DuVernay, because that's, you know, and she was popular amongst their cocktail parties. I imagine the name drops here and there, that sort of thing. But she didn't deliver, you know, and it's quite the risk you're taking for someone who's going to take, you're going to give them that amount of money. And it goes nowhere, and you lose. You're not in a position to do that anymore. The other thing of the news that came with it was they announced that the Aquaman spinoff of Trench was also canceled. And that's James Wan's project. And that's a curious thing to look at. Could be the same thing. It's like, we just don't have the money for that either. Which it was just going to be this horror film, which is what James Wan came out of. You know, he crafted The Conjuring, which was very profitable for Warner Brothers. And then, of course, he delivered Aquaman, which was their billion-dollar movie. And then they were going to do this spinoff, and horror is something he knows a lot about. And it was an interesting thing. I suppose very simply, you could have done this movie about people trapped on a boat, and they're getting, you know, attacked by these sea monsters. It's almost a throwback to old 50s sci-fi horror movies and stuff. You know, this actual monsters attacking you rather than, I don't know, psycho killers or something, or ghosts or demons or whatever. And it seemed to me like, yeah, they probably could do that, you know, and maybe only a brief mention of the DC universe at all in it. You know, wouldn't even be necessary. But now they scrapped it. So there's that. Then he had produced the Swamp Thing series, which was canceled before it was even premiered. They put it on that the DC Universe streaming service, and then eventually was rebroadcast on CW. But so I mean, that's twice they've kind of shut this guy's stuff down, and I'm wondering, is there trouble with James Wan? And I'm like, is he being eliminated because he might possibly be a threat to Bad Robot? I don't know. That's just pure speculation on that. But it's kind of odd, because here's a guy who actually did good for them. And two of his projects just gone, because Swamp Thing will now be under Bad Robot. That's going to be a part of Justice League Dark, and that's all J.J. Abrams' territory. So, I don't know. But so as of now, I think he's still on board for the Aquaman 2, the sequel. But I just thought that was it's curious. Because, I mean, I thought, you know, a monster movie, there's a lot of ways, lighting and whatnot. You could do that on the cheap. It wouldn't have to be the same amount of money you spend on an Aquaman movie. But, well, maybe not. So there we are. So somewhat good news, because I don't think you could have gotten a good... It didn't even sound like they were going to do actual new guys. It was going to be some feminist statement through the Furies and Big Barda and Granny Goodness. She said, yeah, Darkseid would be in the movie, but it's probably more like he would just be an example of the toxic male and that sort of thing. And like, ugh, 2 hours of that crap. You want to go to a movie for adventure and excitement and stuff, not a political campaign lecture. But that sounded more like what you would get. So, dodge that one, but it probably means there won't be any New God stuff for quite some time, unless, just unless, they decide to move forward with Snyderverse. But then again, even if they did, how much spinoff can you get out of that? You know, because again, I'm thinking, not enough money to go around, at least not at the moment. So, hopefully, Snyder Cut and Godzilla versus King Kong is fixing that for the moment for HBO Max, but well, we'll see. Thanks for watching and listening. Say, while you're still here, why not like and subscribe and share with your many friends? Yes. Also, check out my mini stores in the link description below. Yes, where you can get t-shirts, hats, mugs, all those goodies with my artwork on them. Oh, yeah. And head over to indieplanet.com and pick up a copy of my comic book, Night Night. Oh, yeah. You can also catch me at my podcast, Mr Nailsin Show, on RadioMisfits.com. And you can also watch my videos on BitChute.com and now on Rumble.com. Oh, my goodness. So many places to watch me and my stuff. Oh, yeah. And if that's not enough for you, well, you can follow me on many social media platforms and say hi to your old pal, Mr. Nailsin.